Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Uti Veda Vibhagine Yomagda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanatam Satguru Pranatoshmaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om. Okay, so we did the verse 57 last time, which covered the Anandamaya Kosha, saying that he is born of tamas. So why Anandamaya Kosha is born out of tamas? Because Anandamaya Kosha is very subtle energy, but energy is a form of matter. So the fact that the Anandamaya Kosha is the not self is known to us, and as the not self, it can only be a product of ignorance. So therefore, it is a modification of tamas. Everything much manifests through the combination of the three energies, and tamas is there. Why tamas is there? I mean, because we tend to believe that that the self is this beautiful state or this beautiful experience, that we refer to as Anandamaya Kosha. We say this is the self. Oh yeah, it's so sublime, it's so celestial, it's so beautiful. So this state is the self. So this very misidentification or misconception is a byproduct of tamas. So this causal body, this Anandamaya Kosha, is a modification born of tamas. It is pervaded by the reflect 3 degrees of experiential bliss. So we covered that last time. But when we are in that state of satisfaction, we often experience in the awakened state, of course, when we are just alert, living through our days, in the state, in the awakened state, we experience that very different, various degrees of this Anandamaya Kosha, as we know. So as circumstances are favorable to our desires and fears, and then we experience different degrees of satisfaction, bliss, and happiness and contentment. So we refer to that as Priyamoda and Pramoda. And the rise out of awareness with the gain of a desirable object. So we did cover pretty well last time this verse. We know that when things are favorable to our vasanas, so we experience this inner satisfaction that it's the goal of everyone doing any kind of action through the day. It is the pleasurable result of meritorious deeds when experienced. Anyone who has a body enjoys without effort by becoming bliss itself. So when the circumstance are propitious, the field is somehow bringing about punya, and we are having that kind of inner satisfaction because of favorable circumstance. And then this experience of satisfaction, bliss, is natural and effortless. Without effort, we experience that, and we become that. Ujiva becomes satisfaction, and because satisfaction is the nature of the self, in the sense that the self is full, it's whole and complete. So limitless self. So every time we experience this bliss, the jiva feels that, oh, I am this bliss, and this bliss is the self. It's as if the jiva becomes this ananta, and identifies with ananta. You say, yes, that is the whole purpose of my life, is to experience this inner peace, this inner heaven, satisfaction. So we experience effortlessly every time circumstances are on our side. Okay, let's enter the verse 58. So this Anandamaya kosha manifests fully in deep sleep. It is experienced partially in dream and awaking through the contemplation gain of desired objects. More or less, it is a repetition of of the same concept with a small variation here. It says that in deep sleep, this sense of fullness, this sense of satisfaction, peace is one of the most the best representation of limitlessness, because when the mind is free from the idea that something is missing, or something is undesirable in my life, in my experience, and then it's the peace is disturbed. So when we in deep sleep, the mind subsides, because in that state, desires and aversions, they become they suspend. So when they are suspended, we experience this Anandamaya kosha fully. That's why we love it. But what's the downside? The downside is that we enjoy it, we go there, we experience it, but our intellect is not there with its discriminating, discerning, determining faculties in order to understand the full nature of the pranya jiva, the one who is in deep sleep. The intellect being not present, the deep sleep, although it is a manifestation of a full manifestation of Anandamaya kosha, still it does not provide us with the possibility of learning, of growing, and so on. So it manifests itself fully in deep sleep, and it manifests itself partially in dream and awaking. So in dreaming, we have what we call sweet dreams. And they say, "Oh, I had such a sweet, loved dream." So I was there, and when I realized that something was changing, I was going to begin waking up. I was like, "Oh no, please! I want to keep enjoying. It's the most beautiful dream," and so on. So we know that we experience this bliss when somehow we have developed to produce beautiful celestial vasanas, a lot of punya that somehow it somehow manifests itself during the night or in the afternoon, mostly in the night when we go into deep sleep, and then later on some of those mental energies begin awakening, and then it projects itself, and depending on the nature of our sanchita, or the nature of our vasanas, the nature of the impressions left behind from my day, my last few days. So my life has been going in such a way, my mind is so satisfied, my actions are beautiful, and so on, and therefore I'm just building this incredible state, and then it manifests itself as a dream, and then due to this merit, this punya, I do experience Anandamaya kosha in dream sleep as well. So in deep sleep, and then in dream, we just dream sleep, we experience, and then partially in dream, and also in a waking state. In the waking, instead of we be dreaming in the night, we are daydreaming, as we say. We can be daydreaming in the waking state, and just the thought of certain accomplishments, if we have something that we are working in. I mean, a very simple example is when we in love with someone, just remembering the other, it produces a certain degree of bliss, it is experienced partially because it's not totally full and undefected. You know, this Anandamaya quotient, the waking state, is defected by nature because it's never really full. Because we know that as we experience it, it begins fading away. You know, diminishing in intensity and quality and so on. So it's partially is experienced in dream and in awakening through the contemplation or gain of desired object. So as I was saying, so even the contemplation of my most dear desire or most dear person or most beloved person or the dearest kind of object of desire, when I start imagining that I'm getting closer, coming close to gain it, to accomplish it, just that kind of contemplation, as it says here, the contemplation of the gain of desired object, that is going to produce also a sort of Anandamaya quotient. It's partially experienced, okay? So, and then it goes back to the Priya Moda and Pramoda. So sometimes just thinking about these desires and developing the idea that we are getting close, we are coming close to the game, to achieving that goal and so on, that already produces a certain degree of bliss. No? Excuse me just a moment, because I have a stand that appeared here on my telephone and his face is not going away. And if I turn my telephone and then I go back to the verse number 1. You guys know Stan, huh? From Shine World. Okay, I got rid of Stan here. Okay.
Linda,
yes.
I just realized how that works because I have a sister who is housebound, and she spends all her time on real estate websites looking at homes that she might live in one day. Sort of daydreaming and imagining about getting that desire fulfilled. And it's kind of like self-medicating, isn't it?
It is what?
Like self-medicating. She's giving herself a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it can also be seen as delusion, although it produces a little satisfaction, a little joy, you know. It's a manifestation of tamas. Tamas causes this condition called daydreaming. The daydreamers are the people that do not have enough energy to go and accomplish their goal. And then they dream about their goals, and that they somehow they suck some joy, you know, but it's a very tamasic kind of joy, because deep inside in the mind of the person knows that she's daydreaming, you know, and the reality is something else, you know.
Samsara.
But it gives something, right? It does something, but it does not help the person.
No, but it's innocent.
Huh?
It's kind of an innocent
It's a kind of
innocent approach.
Yeah.
On her part.
It's an innocent. It's a product of ignorance.
Yeah.
And yeah. So and it's typical of people who are more tamasic. I don't know if that's her case, because rajasic people, they are so busy acting, you know.
My perspective, that she's wheelchair bound now, so she's her body is very tamasic.
Right. Yeah.
Without nothing she can do about it.
Yeah.
Really. So.
Okay.
Parabda.
Yeah. So if it was in our power, we would remain in a state of perpetual joy, yet our experience of happiness are ever too brief, and we appear powerless to prolong them. So that's the problem. That's the problem by our Anandamaya kosha, even in deep sleep, which is so beautiful because I don't know about you guys, but every day in the morning when I'm about getting up, I always think like, oh no, please give me another 10, give me another 15. I want to stay there, you know? So it's all time bound. So we wish we could remain in that state of satisfaction, peace, and contentment, perpetually. But that's not the case because it's mithya. In mithya, everything is time bound. So if it was in our power, we would remain in a certain state, and that's the goal of everybody working hard. As a yogi, they want to develop a certain state of satisfaction that could be held permanently. Right? But we know, we are Vedantins. We know that that is an impossibility. Therefore, we moved into knowledge because controlling those states. The Nevikalpa Samadhi is nothing but it's a self-induced deep sleep state, you know. So from what I hear, I don't have much experience with Nevikalpa Samadhi. But in any case, so it does not have much value because it is something that comes and goes. Therefore, it is mithya. It is an object of experience which is bound by time because the nature of every objective experience is impermanence. It begins and it ends. But if it was in our power, we would definitely hold on to those states of perpetual joy. Yet our experience of happiness are ever brief, and we have no power to even prolong them. We try to prolong them. I have a friend of mine, I have been staying in her house. And now everything was set up in a certain way in her life, and her daughter is married to one guy, and they were moving somewhere, and this person was selling her apartment. Everything set up, and then in the last moment, she discovered that her daughter is breaking up with her husband, and she was in the shock because she never imagined that the daughter and her husband, they were trying to push relationship that was already gone, So they were trying to prolong whatsoever bliss that was still possible within that relationship. But now they revealed to the mother, and the mother said, "Oh my God, how I'm gonna tell her that I sold my apartment?" And the daughter comes back to live in the apartment. I don't know what she's gonna do about that. Huh? So if we would like to prolong our beautiful relationships with people, things, and circumstances and situations, everything, but everything is a constant flow, flux of change. So nothing remains the same. We are compelled by some force to relinquish whatever joy comes to us and move on, embracing once again the fears and desires that drives us through life. It is the situation of every human being. We wish these moments of peace and love and satisfaction would be permanent, but yet we are just we have to put up with the fact that they come whenever they come, depend on our effort, depend on our prarabdha karma, and when they come, we enjoy, and then when we get a little wiser, we know that that's the name of the game. It's pleasures and pain, pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure. Peace, and then agitation, depression, peace, and so on, those variations. When we live driven by these desires and we make the objects of desires and fears the only means by which I can gain this love and peace and satisfaction. So we are just like that. We live compelled to the whatever joy comes, whenever it comes, depending on our prarabdha karma, depending on the field. And then we are dictated by our fears and desires, and that's the way we go through life. So it's not a very nice affairs, as we say, but it's the reality of every human being living under the spell of ignorance, Maya. So we all live like we are driven by this force. So, and then it comes saying that without self-knowledge, the most satisfying experience of joy comes to us in deep sleep. Without self-knowledge, the most satisfying experience that human beings have is deep sleep. And unfortunately, as we get older, like we are getting here, I mean, today we are not many, we don't have any young people around among us. I don't know you guys, but as I'm aging, I sleep less. So if when I was young, I could sleep 8-9 hours. Ooh, so I used to sleep like a rock until my son was born, and then my sleep changed. I never slept that deep anymore. And I was really, really sad and upset. Oh my God, this baby, I never sleep deep anymore because I'm always concerned that he may wake up, And then we sleep less and less, and we have to accept that. So without self-knowledge, the most satisfying experience of joy comes in deep sleep, in that interval between dreams or between dream and the waking state. The disturbing ego with its likes and dislikes, they just subside. The ego is just, it's a pain in the butt. This Mr. Ego is, all its likes and dislikes, and I want this, and I don't want that. So when this ego is put to sleep, and then we can experience this nice state, and we become somehow dependent and looking forward to those nice, those we spend a lot of money. I mean, when I was in the States making money, I had no problem. I want to buy the best possible mattress, even if it costs more than $1,000, just to hope to have a few more minutes of good sleep in the night, and then special pillow and so on. We invest money because we know that there's nothing better than deep sleep. But it is a sad kind of state of affair, I mean, we depend on deep sleep, and deep sleep it becomes shorter and shorter as we age, as it seems, because it seems that as people begin approaching death, they become more tamasic, and then they sleep more as well. And but the problem is we don't have self-knowledge, and then we are subject to Maya and this avidya, this ignorance that makes us live in that position. I depend on succeeding in gaining what I desire or avoiding what I don't desire to experience some satisfaction that makes it worth living this life. But thanks God, Ishvara gives me a few moments of deep sleep. And since we know that there is a possibility of ananda, of joy, of satisfaction, any time, any moment in the night, then we say, okay, it is worth living, so I want to live forever. I want to live forever because I can experience Anandamaya kosha here and there, and then in the deep sleep as well. And then I come back, and then I take a look in the world, and then I start struggling a little bit, trying to chase things, to avoid things, and there we go. And then if it gets a little tough, I drink some good wine, I smoke pot, and I take ayahuasca sometime, I make music, anything to make life a little bit more livable, light, enjoyable. But the scripture says that the best deal we have is deep sleep. Hey, Carrie.
Hi.
Why you with us, or you just came in?
Let's see. Wait.
We hear you.
Yeah, I was unmuted. I just been helping my mother this morning and stuff, so just got done.
Okay.
She's 90.
Oh, she's young, like my father. My father is gonna be 91 in November.
Well, she is too. She turns 91 in November too, Orlando.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So.
interesting. My father turns 91, November 28th.
Oh, wow, that was my dad's birthday.
Huh?
My mother, that was my father's birthday,
November.
November 28th. He's gone now, but her birthday is November 1st.
I see. So she's a little older.
Yeah.
With
Okay.
my dad is that he's fixated with this idea of reaching 100, and he's giving us already so much trouble at this age. Just imagine, father, down the road.
Well, she used to say she wanted to live to 100, but now her knees are so bad. She said, I don't want to live to 100 anymore. So, okay.
So we are talking about Anandamaya kosha and the beautiful experience of peace and satisfaction in deep sleep and here and there during the waking states when things are favorable to our likes and dislikes. When the ego is absent, so is the non-ego. We are then no longer an individual body-mind making a way uncertainly through a world of bewildering objects. So when the ego is absent, so is the non-ego. So can you guys help me with this one, because it's not popping in my mouth what that means is non-ego. When the ego is absent, so is the non-ego. So if the ego is non-absent, so is the non-ego. So what deal is this one?
I don't get that either.
Huh?
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, it does not make much sense, but anyhow.
Well, maybe it means that you're in a state of unity. You know, you're.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the ego is absent, so the nirvikalpa samadhi, or the state of full satisfaction when things, when the ego subsides in the waking state, the ego and the transcendence of the ego. So both are not, So when in deep sleep, the ego goes and any possible spiritual state is not available as well. We are then no longer an individual body-mind. Yeah, so we are no longer, exactly, thank you, Ruth. We are no longer individual body-mind making our way through uncertainly through a world of bewildering objects. So in deep sleep, duality collapses, and for a time we are at peace. So this Shankara is really selling deep sleep very hard here. Huh? So
Can I just ask, are we on 57?
58.
Oh, this is 58. Okay. Thank you.
Duality collapses, and for a time we are at peace. So we recall deep sleep in the waking state. We infer it from the fact that a period of time elapsed in which we knew nothing, for we cannot recall experiencing objects. And we know that absence of that experience felt wonderful, for we express our satisfaction with it in the phrase, I slept so good. Furthermore, we all desire the state of deep sleep because we know that there is an experience of great joy. We do not desire something unless there is an experience of that, right? So what is the deal with deep sleep here? Duality collapse, we experience peace. We are not really there, but we are there. So the jiva in its awakened state is not really there. So that's why the scripture presents three jivas. Vishwa, the jiva in the awakened state. Taijasa, the jiva in dream state. And pranya, the jiva, pranya jiva is the jiva in deep sleep. So there is an experiencing entity, but this experience entity is so unsubstantial because it's a product of tamas. There is so much tamas that puts us to sleep, and that I reflection, I am, the ego I that appears in the awakened states and appears in the deep sleep, in the sleep state, yet it appears in the deep sleep. But it's a very, very, very poor reflection, because tamas is a terrible reflection of consciousness. But yet the scripture says that there is a pranya jiva there. And the reason we know that there is a pranya jiva is not only because we infer that I had a good experience because I feel at peace and rest and refreshed and so on, but we infer also by the fact that we wish we could go back, we wish we could have stayed longer, and we only wish and desire things that we have experienced and enjoyed. Therefore, this logic proves to us that we were there experiencing. It was an entity experience, because we can only long for, wish for, and desire to go back to something that we enjoyed, and we enjoyed because we have experienced. So that's the logic. We have experienced that state. We hardly realize when we in deep sleep, although there is a jiva there called the pranya, and the pranya experience something very unique. What does the pranya experience? We say that there is no duality. There is no duality, subject-object, because subject-object in the sense of the word, as we know, is the jiva in the waking state, or the jiva in the dream state, experience the objects of the waking states and the objects of the dream state. So, but the pranya is a very, very extremely subtle experience, entity experiencing something. So there is a sort of duality there, although we say that duality collapsed from the standpoint of the waker and the dreamer collapsed, the duality has collapsed. But from the standpoint of the pranya jiva, there is a subtle duality, the experience called pranya, and an object of experience, which is the absence of object. So the absence of object is the object of experience of the pranya jiva. Understand? And the absence of object does not give rise to any desire to gain or desire to avoid. There is no object really popping up, in my, but nothing conscious as an experiencing jiva in the deep sleep state. So there is nothing appearing, and then I'm totally at peace, which gives the idea to the people in the world of yoga that the world of objects is the problem. Therefore, let's try to live in eternal deep sleep. So the attempt of every yoga to go and follow the path of samadhi yoga is to produce the deep sleep state all through the day, and say, no, objects of the problem. Because when the object appear, what happens? What happens when the objects appear? Immediately it brings up what? Our likes and dislikes, because the mind is going to say, oh yes, I want it, let's get it, and then I have to work to get it. Or my mind is going to say, oh no, please, not again, I want to avoid this one. And then when nothing appears, and then I am at peace. So the pranya jiva is the one who experienced the absence of objective experience. And it feels so wonderful not to experience anything that one wishes to become a yogi and just sleep forever in Vikalpa Samadhi. But what's the problem with Nirvikalpa Samadhi? Because we can sleep, and then when we come back, our vasanas are more or less there. And then you remember the story of that yogi, when woke up after decades, the first thing he said, what is my Coca-Cola? So why? Because before he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he was thirsty. He asked his disciple, go and get me a thumbs up, Coca-Cola Indiana, the Indian Coca-Cola. And then he somehow went and stayed for 2 decades in Vivekachudamani Samadhi. When he came back, the first thing was the desire for the Coca-Cola that popped in his mind. So it means to say that it does not address the fundamental problem, which is the ignorance of the true nature of the self, that somehow cancels all these desires for object, that is binding desires for object, right?
Orlando, I've heard it said that Nirvikalpa Samadhi sort of roasts the seeds of karma. That
Is what? Can you repeat, please, Lynn?
that Nirvikalpa Samadhi roasts, bakes, or makes unfertile the seeds of your karma. That
Yes.
you can get rid of. So there is some benefit.
There is. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, there is some benefit, and this is a good point. Good you brought it up, because there is a discussion in the between the jnanis, the path of knowledge, and the yogi path, because the yogis, they tend to say that that meditation or samadhi is the best purifier of the mind, and the jnani says that knowledge is the best purifier of the mind. So the yogi, they say that because if we go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi over and over again, but the problem is it takes so long to develop a vasana for Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So you have to go and spend a lifetime or more developing that vasana. And then the second problem with Nirvikalpa Samadhi is that once you get to have that vasana, and then again and again you go into this state, and then you're going to purify your mind, and then you're going to develop so much sattva that you're going to remain stuck in sattva, believing that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is enlightenment. That state is enlightenment. So everybody, most people in the spiritual world, thinks that enlightenment is a state. It's equivalent of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, experiencing nothing, experiencing the void. You understand? So that is the problem. The problem is most yogis do not accept the fact that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a good purifier, but it cannot deliver self-knowledge. They don't accept that because they believe that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is self-knowledge. And we say that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is good in purifying the mind, but knowledge is better. Why? Because knowledge addresses the fundamental problem. Knowledge addresses what? Addresses all these likes and dislikes, all the ragas and dveshas that are there disturbing the mind. And, following the analysis of the Upanishads, we understand all of that, and then we turn our back we stop chasing things and running away from things. Gradually, we just, and then what happens to the mind? The mind develops a certain state, which is better described as sahaja samadhi, natural samadhi. You don't need to fall asleep. You just see the world, but the world is no longer binding to you, or binding you, or making you dependent on its objects and so on. So I have no doubt that Kami Yoga is the best purifier to begin with, most natural. And then once the mind is prepared for Jnana Yoga further purifies the mind. And then self-knowledge and moksha is just a natural byproduct. Yeah? Good point. It should be rather revealing to recognize how desirable we find a state in which we, as we normally identify ourselves, simply disappear. Oh, that's very nice, huh? me, I, and I want this, I want that. And then I said, putz, I never thought about that. Let's see how I need the scriptures and Mahatmas here. It must be intriguing for anybody intelligent to see that what I love most is my own absence as an ego, as my likes and dislikes and my story and so on. So the very, very deep sleep, which is the absence of the ego, is what I love the most. So I love the most my absence, the absence of the little me with my likes and dislikes. That's very interesting. Logic. It should be an indication that our usual condition as a subject perceiving objects is not satisfying and it's not natural to us, or else we would rest comfortably running to gain and running to avoid. Oh no, I'm in the rat race, running to gain, running to avoid, and over again, and it feels so comfortable that I am all the time totally satisfied. No, we are not. We are totally satisfied when the night comes and we go to deep sleep, and then I disappear. So the rat race is over, and then the running and all the disturbance ends temporarily. So what is this force that draws us out of deep sleep and casts us back into a painful world of duality? What is this force? That's very interesting. What is this force that draws us out of deep sleep? We are there in deep sleep. That's what I was talking about. I got into this habit since I traveled lately between Brazil and here and there. I got into the habit of getting up at 4 in the morning, and it hasn't changed yet. So what wakes me up every day at 4 in the morning? What is this force that draws us out of deep sleep and casts us back into the painful world of duality, the waking state, me and the object that appear in me? What is this force? It's karma. My vasanas, my likes and dislikes. So my sanchita manifests again as my prarabdha karma, which is my awakening state, with my likes and dislikes and whatsoever life presents before me, my life's circumstance. Karma is this force. So when we are ignorant of what we are, we feel incomplete. We then conceive desires for those things we believe will complete us. So we know that. This leads us to act to obtain the things we desire. Ignorance, desire, and action form the engine of karma. You see? So karma is produced by the belief that reality is duality, that I am the body-mind construct, and the objects are out there to complete me. And then this ignorance compels me to chase objects, and then I'm caught up into karma. And then every day I get up in the morning is because my karma is knock at my door and say, hey man, get up and go and get it, Go and just fulfill yourself. Go and accomplish something here. Do something, get something. So get happy, karma. Something is going to complete me. This leads us to act and obtain the things we desire. Try to obtain, because obtain objects of desires is not that easy. We try hard, but there are certain laws operating in the field that makes it sometimes very competitive. Certain objects, the gain of certain objects. Sometimes it is tough. This leads us to act to obtain the things we desire. Ignorance, desire, and action form the engine of karma. As long as we remain ignorant of what? It's so long as we remain ignorant of what? Because something is missing on my text here. Anyhow, as long as I remain ignorant of the deep sleep remains an experience that comes and goes rather than the certain knowledge of non-duality. Okay, it means to say that as long as we are ignorant, we rely on deep sleep because we don't even know that there is such a thing as knowledge of the non-dual nature of reality that permanently resolves the problem, and then we become victims of our karma and dependent on deep sleep and those fleeting moments of accomplishments, success in our endeavors and so on. It is perceived as a negative event. It is perceived as a negative event perceived by the ego and defined not by what it is, but what it is not. The ego resumes its shape when we leave deep sleep. So the state of deep sleep is perceived negatively because it's an absence of the world of object as we know it, although the absence of object is an object by itself. Now, what it means by that? I mean, we go in a place and then we find in place, oh, I went in this hall, I had an appointment for a meeting, but somehow there was a fire, there was a flooding, there was a rain, bad weather, and so on. And then I went there, there was nothing. There was nothing. No, the hall was empty. I say there was nothing. So when I say there was nothing, I'm discounting the fact that the hall was there, and I, the witnessing of the empty hall, am also there, right? So likewise, this experience of deep sleep is perceived as a negative event. The ego is not there to claim, oh, I'm experiencing something, because the ego of the visual, that is the jiva in the awake state, is not there, or the ego of the ajasa, the jiva in the dream sleep, in the dream state. So the ego not being there cannot really claim the experience. But we know that the negation of object is the affirmation that there is a space in which the objects are not present. Now, if we negate the space of the hall, the objects in the hall, we have to say, okay, the negation of the objects in the hall is the presence of the space. The space now is pure, not being occupied by anything. So, furthermore, I am the witnessing subject, conscious subject principle, witnessing space, right? The ego reassumes its shapes when we leave deep sleep, and our chase after happiness in objects continues, in which the pleasure we experience is conditioned by time and rises in intensity. As was explained in the consideration of Priya, Moda, or Moda, that can be described as imagining or contemplating a desirable object, and then getting close to gain it, obtaining it, and then enjoying the object of desire. Priya, Moda, different degrees of satisfaction, happiness. Okay, verse 59. Anandamaya kosha is still on Anandamaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha is not the self because it is a modification of prakriti. It depends on the mind, which acts as an upadhi, is the result of meritorious actions and manifests in different degrees. So similar concept. So another argument to prove Anandamaya kosha is the not self. So we know that Anandamaya kosha was born out of tamas, which is ignorance, and it says here that it is a modification of Maya, fundamental energy. The Maya brings about Anandamaya kosha, which is the causal body that we can be seen in the micro and the macro, in the macrocosmic causal body, and the microcosmic causal body of the jiva. It's a modification of Maya, prakriti, fundamental energy. It depends on the mind, which acts as an upadhi, so the mind. So this Anandamaya kosha happens in the, it depends on the mind. This is a very interesting statement, because the mind, as we were looking before, is not really present in the state of Anandamaya kosha, in the state of deep sleep. Therefore, it says that it depends on the mind. The mind acts as an upadhi. It's a result of meritorious actions and manifesting degree. So we know that it's a result of good actions. It's a form of punya. It depends on meritorious action. So, but let's look again here. It depends on the mind, which acts as an upadhi. So the mind is the subtle body in this context, and the subtle body produces the mind or the intellect of the jiva. And this Anandamaya kosha is something that yet it refers to the jiva, it refers to the intellect of the jiva, to the mind of the jiva. So I would interpret that way. It is the result of meritorious actions and manifesting degrees. Let's take a look to see what Dayananda says here, because this text is pretty much Dayananda's with some additions done by Ed. Ed?
Could it be that it's just a summary because it's saying modification of prakriti? Could that be? I'm sorry, am I not coming across? It could be just a summary of the verses before, because it says it's a modification of prakriti. That could be deep sleep, right? Depends upon the mind, which could be dreaming and waking.
Yeah.
And then punya, and then and then priyamoda and pramoda.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good job, Lynn. Thank you. Yeah. So it's definitely, it depends on the mind. The mind is what brings about the three states. We say the three mental states, right? The waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. So all of these are mental states. So therefore, the awakening, Anandamaya kosha, in either way, in the dream sleep and in the waking state, when I gain my desirable objects, in any case, is a mental condition that is said to be ananta, satisfaction. So it depends on the mind. Yeah, very good. And the mind is an upadhi of the self, as we know. So the mind is not the self, it's an upadhi due to its close proximity, with the subtle body. And then the mind appears identified, the self appears identified as with the mind. So it acts as an upadhi, is the result of meritorious actions and manifests in different degrees, as we have seen before. Okay, again, we go back to the upadhi. An upadhi is a limiting adjunct. So this is one of the definitions of an upadhi. An upadhi, we can say it's a limiting adjunct in the sense that due to the proximity with the quality, the proximity between two principles, the quality of something appears as if transferred to something else. And then this thing that becomes colored, for example, the crystal that becomes colored by the redness of the rose, becomes a limiting adjunct to the redness of the rose, which was just redness. It was not really comprised or enclosed in the crystal. So from this perspective, upadhi is said to be a limiting adjunct, which serves as an analogy as the subtle body or the jiva identified with the three bodies, more specifically with the subtle body, due to the proximity of the subtle body with self. So the upadhi, a limiting adjunct is a case of mistaken identity. Its proximity to the self leads us to attribute its qualities. In this case, those of the mind to the self. So the proximity of the mind, the jiva intellect to the self is such that leads us to attribute its qualities to the self. So we think that the self changes. No? The self has states. The self sleeps and awakens and dreams and so on. So it's those properties or qualities, variations, states of the upadhi called the jiva mind and the jiva intellect. Its proximity to the self leads us to attribute its qualities, in this case, those of the mind, to the self. As soon as we experience joy, the intellect, the ego, lays claim to it and assigns it a cause. So we experience joy, and then we always immediately, the ego, say, okay, so where is it coming from? Where is this joy coming from? No? You see the mechanism there, the mistaken assumption. We experience joy immediately. The intellect say, "Oh, it must be coming from somewhere. It's coming from some object of experience." So the ego never conceives the idea that joy is my nature, because the jiva feels very limited and miserable and unsatisfied and inadequate and incomplete and so on. So as soon as the ego experiences joy, it lays claim to it and assigns, just to say, "Oh my God, this is my joy. Oh, what a state. Oh." And immediately want to find out what is causing this joy. Maybe it's the new meditation technique I'm doing. Maybe it's my new husband or wife, or my new house, my new car, my new this and that, or it is this beautiful experience that I had, this beautiful, epiphany I had. I had such a beautiful epiphany, and I say, "Oh, okay, that's why I felt satisfied now." Because this satisfaction is coming from the object. It assigns it a cause instead of recognizing joy as the very nature of the intellect, the very nature of the meditation, the very nature of the samsari, of the person chasing happiness indirectly through the gain or avoidance of objects. So the ego, it cannot see it. It's so obvious, but we fail to understand that, at least until we come to the scriptures. And then the scripture just puts it, and somehow it brings it into our face, And then it has to do it again and again, because we keep forgetting and denying it. No? And then when we see we are chasing objects again and again, and scripture comes and say, hey, you know, it's a misconception, misapprehension. You are just not really understand the mechanics here, you know. There is no joy. The joy is coming from something else. Instead of recognizing that the joy is the very nature of the intellect, we believe of it as having been obtained, or it must, we believe it is being originated by the gain of something. Now, okay, now I know it's coming from this new object of experience, my new husband, my new girlfriend, my new this, my new account, my new experience. And then I'm bound to that experience, right? I'm bound to that experience. Whatsoever experience, that's what brings bondage. You know? This bounding to objects of experience is caused by the ignorance that the joy is the nature of the intellect, the very fundamental nature of the self. That's why we can be joyful, peaceful, without anything. If we know what we know, you know, if we know this truth, this spiritual knowledge is properly, really understood and accepted, intellectually acceptance, not like blindly acceptance, intellectual acceptance. You know that the objects they don't really have intrinsically any happiness, joy, or security, as it's said in the Upanishads again and again. Instead of recognizing joy to be the very nature of the intellect, we believe that having it as being obtained by the acquisition of any object, we come to associate certain things with happiness because they are remembered as having been present when happiness was experienced. You see the ignorance here, how amazing it is. Oh, Lynn is having a good time now. I mean, we have an happiness, we feel happy, and then immediately we want to connect that happiness to something. I'm saying, where the hell this experience, this happiness coming on? But it's really, it can become so subtle that sometimes we get happy and we have no clue. It's just the goodness, the proportions, the prarabdha karma, the karma of the individual somehow, the merits, the punya that was sitting on my sanchita, no? Karma, and then it manifests, and then I'm happy. And then people destroy that happiness trying to figure out where is this happiness coming from. You understand? Where is it coming from? And then the happiness is destroyed because we want to find out where is it coming from. Just because certain things were around me when I got happy, I don't need to associate this happiness with any one of these objects that were around me or any one of these other experiences. You know, it's just, I have to understand that the mechanism is very simple. Happiness comes, and sometimes comes effortlessly when we least expect. Sometimes it comes when we work hard for it. Of course, it comes in deep sleep, but it doesn't help much except for giving us a break. But happiness comes, and happiness comes because the mind is somehow naturally, spontaneously, effortlessly freed from desires and aversions. So that indicates us that these desires and aversions are the very force that produce this unhappiness that compels me to chase objects, as I mean, to find happiness. So the happiness comes because it's a natural state of the mind when the mind is at peace, meaning to say the ego is put to sleep in sleeping state or sleep during the wake, the waking sleep. The wise sleeps when the world is awake, meaning to say that the mind of the wise is just free from all these desires and fears. And then he can sleep while everybody is awake, running around to chasing things and so on. So This is the mechanism, these very energies of desires and fears is what destroys our happiness or peace, our satisfaction. And sometimes this satisfaction comes naturally, and then it should be easier for us to accept it as not connect to any object, okay? Because at least we can see, look, I don't know. I mean, I haven't done anything. I haven't not achieved anything right now, and out of the blue, this happiness comes. That should make us to begin question and contemplate, where is this happiness coming from? Every one of us knows that sometimes happiness comes, peace comes from nowhere. No? And we have a hard time to connect to any event or any situation or people, places, things. So that could be an indication that happiness is a state of mind. And it's not related to the object. It's related to my state of mind. When the mind is properly resolved by the means of jnana, and then it's a natural state of the jnana, you know, because jnana has neutralized those likes and dislikes, those fears and desire. And then again we come to understand that I rather work on my mind, purify, refine my mind, you know, canceling those mental disturbance, desires and fears. So I want to work on my mindset and forget about running, chasing to gain and so on. So it is the mindset is the source of happiness, not the objects. So therefore it's better we don't get engaged in trying to change the setup, but we try to work on the mindset, our mindset, not the mindset of the others, our mindset. So we come to associate certain things with happiness because they are remembered as having been present when happiness was experienced. Thus, Anandamaya quotient is not the joy of the self, but a thought that records. It is the thought that sees joy as an effect depending upon certain circumstances. So we have project this happiness on some event, on some experience, some object. That is the misplacement of joy and happiness and peace. We misplace it on circumstances, events, and situations and experience. This thought is born out of ignorance, as we know. It's a modification of prakriti, which is another name for Maya. It's a modification of Maya. Maya produces this thought. Anandamaya kosha, the joy that comes. It's a modification of prakriti, which is another name for Maya. It's a mirage in the desert, the snake in the rope, the embodied individual, the snake in the rope. So it's a superimposition, it's a misapprehension of the nature of joy. This text, written by Shankara, it begins with those kinds of statements. The self is of the nature of joy. Again and again, the self is of the nature of joy and satisfaction. And some verses say the self is of the nature of security and so on. It's a mirage in the desert, the snake in the rope. So happiness and joy is the very nature of the jiva. The embodied individual, the jiva, experiences joy as a result of good actions called punya karma. or it might be more accurate to say that joy is experienced under circumstances associated with good actions. Yeah, it's better said. So if the individual thinks that joy is the result of good actions, he is still under the misconception that he can control punya papa, which is not really under the control of the jiva, because as we know, the jiva does not have real control over the results of one's actions. We do actions and we leave the results to Ishvara. Therefore, it's better to understand it's experience, what is it? That joy is our nature, obtain, and the joy, I'm sorry, I got confused here. It's more accurate to say that joy is experienced under circumstances associated with good action. Because it's not my actions. So nice, very subtle, but very important, distinction there. So joy is better said to be associated with my past good action. There is a connection between good actions and the joys that I experience. So I don't do my actions trying to control the results, but every time I get this Anandamaya kosha in the waking state, I don't try to pinpoint exactly what is the reason, what's the cause, and so on, We just know, oh, I'm enjoying some merits here, the result of some good actions, this life, previous life, whatever, It's just, oh, thank you, Lord, for the punya, thank you. I don't need to understand where is it coming from. I know that my mind has changed. I know that happiness is a state of mind. It's a reflection of consciousness in the mind. When the mind is free from those ragas and dveshas, those energies that somehow affects the intellect. That joy is our very nature. It's not a product of the mind and sense which operate in the waking and dream states, nor it's the product of the absence of mind and sense in the deep sleep state or in samadhi. It's not a state at all, for a state can only be a passing experience. So this is a very, very interesting statement that I like to elaborate a little bit, because I often like to present happiness and joy in two levels as the very nature of the self. But as we know, the self is not an experiencing entity, right? So the self is not an experienced entity. So joy and happiness is the very nature of the self. But the self is experienced only in the intellect of the jiva as a reflection of the self, the self of the nature of fullness and limitlessness. When it reflects in the mind of the jiva, if the mind is a good reflector, meaning to say it's a sattvic mind, free from those excess of rajas and tamas, and then the reflection is so pure, that the jiva and only the jiva experience this Anandamaya kosha. But the self is not an experiencing entity. But where is this joy coming from? It's not coming from the mind. That's what it's trying to say here. The mind is a reflect. The joys come from my nature, because my nature is fullness. It's completion. It's limitlessness. Okay? It's non-dual. One without a second. So the joy and happiness is my nature as the self, and then it is experienced in my intellect, the reflector. It's experienced by myself, the jiva, as a reflection of my limitless nature on the mind. That is a proper sattvic reflector, reflecting in my intellect in the way that it can be cognitively, apprehend and experience and know as the experience of Anandamaya kosha, the awakened state, limitlessness, bliss, and so on. So the best way to experience Anandamaya kosha is it's not by deep sleep, it's not by gaining objects of desires, it's not by avoiding objects of desire. The best way is by understanding one's nature as already accomplished, as already full, complete, and whole. Therefore, the mind becomes a natural reflector that propitiates this experience of satisfaction, because the self is fullness and satisfaction, but when it shines in a tamasic mind, it cannot really be experienced that way. And when it shines in a rajasic mind, cannot as well be experienced that way, because the rajasic mind is going to, distorts the fullness of the self, and is going to project an infinity of objects, and is going to tell, go and get it. And the jiva becomes extrovert towards objects. So the best way to establish the mind in that state, experiential state of Anandamaya kosha, is by the means of self-knowledge, that which effectively neutralize desires and fears. The self does not come and go. States of mind come and go. So this is another point here. So this experiential Anandamaya kosha, it has 3 degrees, Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. When it comes and goes, comes and goes as well. Even for the yoni, you understand? Because the yoni has a mind which is product of prakriti, maya, and it has the 3 energies. The proportions of this constitution of the mind of the yoni that do not fluctuate as much, because there is very little rajas, there's much less rajas than tamas operating there. There's more sattva, there is less desires and fears, that is almost, And then the mind of the yoni is more sattvic, experience more of this nature of joy. But yet it modifies. But the nature of the self is that which never changes, is of the nature of Ananda. Ananda means limitless, fullness, wholeness. One without a second. So the nature of the mind is that which does not have degrees, does not have any variations of fullness. Why? Because the nature of the self is wholeness, fullness, and completion, and limitlessness itself. Is that which is going to be experienced by the jiva to the degree that his mind can just reflect it and apprehend it and understand that that is my nature. My nature does not change. My experience of Ananda is going to change, But my knowledge of my nature as Ananda does not change. That's why we say knowledge is the only thing that is always good. That's why we are for self-knowledge, not for self-experience, not for samadhi experience. Knowledge is always good. Once you know, you know. Doesn't matter if I'm experiencing Priya, Moda, and Pramoda, or even difficult moments of pain, because my knowledge does not change. I understand this is all prakriti, this is all maya, this is all the force of my prarabdha karma, the gunas, but I know what I am, which is the nature of everything and everyone. So that's the beauty of self-knowledge. Is that which is always good when it's really hard and fast, well retained, kept at all times. And the joy that's our nature resides in the limitless of our nature. The joy, which is our nature, resides in the limitless nature, limitless of our very nature as the self. The two are one. The nature and the joy I experience is one. They all have the same nature, which is limitlessness. The limitless original, limitless of the self, and the reflected limitless of the self on my intellect, which produces this experience of joy, happiness, satisfaction. The two are one because both are consciousness, both are ananta, both are fullness. You understand? It's the same. Therefore, the joy that is our nature resides in the limitlessness of my nature. The limitlessness of nature and the joy that is our nature, my nature, is the one and the same. What it means to say, this again, it helps us to understand why Shankara begins saying, I mean, he again and again resolves his previous statements, and he begins saying that the self is of the nature of limitless and joy. So he's equating limitless with joy, satisfaction, peace. Peace is only found in limitlessness. Is the understanding of my limitless nature. Are you guys with me? Yeah? Okay. So anything that's bound in any way, including the most intense and prolonged states of joy, as in samadhi, cannot be the self. So Anandamaya Kosha, the experiential Anandamaya Kosha, is not the self. But to know I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, is equal to the self. The self knowing itself in spite of Maya, Mithya, Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagat. So that's the difference between experiencing self and knowing I am the self. Anything that's bound in any way, including the most intense and prolonged states of Anandamaya Kosha, experiential state. That's why the Yeni does not care for this Anandamaya Kosha thing, you know? He does not care. Because we care to it when we believe that Anandamaya Kosha is the end, you know, of our suffering. But once we understand that Anandamaya Kosha is not going to resolve it because it is bound by time and it has variations of degrees, and then we understand that the only solution is knowledge. Oh gee, my cell phone restarted. It's going to take me to the verse number 1. Yeah. So can you please read for me the last sentence? Anyhow, it's time for us. The last sentence, please.
Okay, I'll do it. So anything that is bound in any way, including the most intense and prolonged states of joy, as in samadhi, cannot be the self.
Yeah. So no state, no object of experience, no matter how prolonged and how blissful and beautiful it may be, is going to satisfy me because I am the very source of satisfaction. I, the subject, conscious, non-experienced principle, witnessing principle called consciousness. I am the source of fullness, limitless, and completion. So it's, and this is only possible by the means of understanding one's nature, by the means of jnana, knowledge. You understand? So we have two possibilities of finding this Anandamaya Kosha, which is not the self, but it's a good indication of the self. One is by trying to understand our nature, which is going to provide us with a lot of those experiences of Anandamaya Kosha as a bonus, as a byproduct, because the real deal is knowledge. I am fullness, wholeness, and completion, because I am consciousness, existence, and Satchitananda. You understand the subtle distinction between, again and again, we are digging into the subtle distinctions between the Satya and Mithya, self is subject, but nothing, conscious, non-experience principle, and any and everything that appears within the scope of this conscious subject principle. So the state, no matter how prolonged, how beautiful, is not what I am, because it can be objectified by me, and it can be seen as something. And if I see something, that something cannot be what I am, because I am that which is always ever present, and the only thing that does not change, does not modify, and my nature is fullness. And fullness is synonymous of happiness and joy, because the moment that we know that we are at full, purna, and then we say, okay, thank you, I'm going to pass on the dessert today because I'm already full, right? I'm satisfied. So I don't need to work for the dessert or anything like that. Okay? So let's work on some good questions for our next session, which is the day after tomorrow. I'm going to be looking forward to it. And we meet again soon. Lovely. And namaste. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everyone. Much love. See you soon again.
Thank you, Orlando. It's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlindo. God bless.
God bless.
Gracias.